Today we're taking a look at a shark. This is the Artisan Cultery SHARK 1707 PS. It's the small version of this knife. This knife comes in two blade sizes, very close to 3 inches and very close to 4 inches. If you're looking for a shark, this might just be the one you're looking for. And wow, aren't my sound effects and video effects just the most cutting edge thing you've ever seen since 1962? Well, here you go. We're going to put this on the tabletop and take a look at this little guy. And hopefully you're interested because I'm having fun with it. You might too. Stick around. As we mentioned in the intro, this is the shark. And the click you heard was this guy. The size differentiation between this and a Rat 1, hey, this is quite a bit smaller than an Ontario Rat 1. But of course, this has got closer to a 3.5-inch cutting edge, and this one's, just tiny bit under 3 inches. And it's got a much bigger handle. It's just a bigger pocket EDC style of a knife, whereas this is more of a single purpose kind of knife. And the powers that be at YouTube don't like to have videos where they talk about and use the words of certain types of things, such as the style of knife that this is. And so this is a knife that's designed for puncturing into things. And it's also fairly a decent enough slicing knife that it's actually, if you've got softer wood like balsa or, some soft evergreen kind of wood, you can actually whittle half decent with this knife as well, simply because of how the blade shape is right here close to the handle. And you just wouldn't use the tip that much for unless you're, carving out maybe delicate features in a carving. But this knife specifically looks the part. It's a shark. It's an attack critter, if you will. Comes in a whole bunch of different colors and options in terms of handle materials. And you got the G10, which is the classic budget stuff. And comes in a few different colors. Blue anodized liners and D2 steel. And this is the 1707 PS, which is the 3-inch version. And then the 1707P is the 4-inch version. They both are right and left friendly with the pocket clip, and they're liner locks. And there's an even higher end version of the Shark, which is a frame lock version instead of a liner lock. And it has titanium and real carbon fiber. And it's model 1707G, and then different numbers for the colors. Since this is a budget channel, so 95% of what I review is under $50 US. This guy is getting close to that market value, but it's not quite there. White Mountain Knives has this for $44.99, the lowest cost version, minus 10% if you use coupon code CCE for Canadian Cutting Edge, and you're looking at $40.49 American. Not bad at all for this knife. So what we have is ceramic ball bearings in there, a ceramic detent ball, steel liners, as I mentioned, D2 steel. It's got a flipper tab with 2 little jimps in there. And, the light switch method causes this guy to just fly open with a tremendous amount of energy. And so does the push button method. And that's because the detent on this specific model, well, not the model, on this specific knife is a little stronger than it should be. I'd like to hear from other people if you've got one of the Artisan Cultery SHARKs. How's the detent on those? This detent is quite strong. You can hear that click in when it closes. And when I go to open it, when I first got it, I was slipping my finger off of it quite a bit until I got used to the detent and the exact amount of pressure that it was needed. And also when you go to close it, you move the liner away and you start to close it. Now the edge of the tang of the blade has to ride up over the detent to, might be visible better if I do it like this. And we're going to zoom in on this. Let's focus here. There you go. Watch this liner here, the one that's on closest to my fingernail right there. When the detent, there you go, rides up, see how it gets pushed away? Well, the amount of pressure it takes to get that detent ball and this spring on this arm to move that way is a fair bit. So very often when I'm closing the knife, it just flies closed. And that's because the amount of pressure that I'm using is, enough to get it going. But in a rush, it's hard to, get that pressure exactly right to get a gentle closing. So you want to make sure your fingers are not in the way when you go to close it, because it's going to close in a hurry if you're doing it that way. And only when I'm doing this for TV or for the video and I'm looking at the LCD, that's the only time I've ever had it bounce back out. Every other time when I'm just using it in my hand, it always closes all the way and just stays that way. Right or left-handed, it does the same kind of thing because I'm pushing to close it, and by the time I get enough pressure, it's too late and it's going to fly closed. Kind of the same mechanisms at work when you go to open it. You're pushing, and then you've got to get the knife to cause the liner to ride up, because the detent ball has to ride up onto the side of the tang. By the time you've got enough pressure to do that, it just flies out with authority. So I wish the detent was a little softer on this, and to make a detent softer is super, super easy if you've got a simple little Dremel tool and the right bit for it. And I've got a video that discusses that, and I've got the video linked down below. So after I'm done this video, I will be softening the detent on this just a little bit. So I recorded this section after I finished the video. I've sharpened it to 20 degrees per side, and it's beautiful. You can see it's pretty much a mirror edge there, not quite, but quite good. And the detent is just a little bit softer and a little easier to open the knife each time you want to. I think I still want to soften the side where the detent rides up on the tang of the blade when you go to close it as well, because that's something I think I still want to adjust. But I'm enjoying this knife. Stonewash on the blade, saber grind, which is a flat grind that doesn't come all the way to the spine, but it's a nice saber grind, and thick blade, comfortable on the hand. Almost any kind of grip is fairly comfortable. Even a reverse grip like this, very comfortable. You're not going to use this knife for this kind of pull cut motion. And in any case, it gets a little bit hot because this pocket clip is actually quite big on this little knife. I don't have the 4-inch version, but I suspect that the pocket clip is identical on both of them. And I think this smaller version would do well if it had a smaller pocket clip as well. But the fact of how far the pocket clip is away from the handle makes it so that this knife pocket clip always has the knife ride all the way down to the bottom of the pocket and not get caught up on those round head screws. So I'm thinking if they had flush screws in there and then a closer to the body of the knife pocket clip, then they could have a smaller pocket clip and have it still ride to the bottom. So let me demonstrate. When I go to put this in my pocket, it slides in right to the bottom. Every time that I've tried it, not bad at all. And you've just got a little bit of that knife sticking out. One thing I do wish they would have done, which actually would have created less work, is if this hole here where this screw is was spaced so that you would just need this hole and one more for the pocket clip. It means that you'd have to have longer screws for, the last screw for the body here, but that's not hard to do. And then you'd have a deeper carry pocket clip and you'd have less holes. There would, on the show side that you're not having the pocket clip, there would just be one hole instead of two holes for the pocket clip. Now let's get over the measurements, or get on to doing all the measurements for this knife. That kind of information. 77 grams of weight, 2.7 ounces. The factory sharpness on this one, not super great. 210 best. 200 is considered sharp. and the bigger the number, the less sharp the knife is. So it's just shy of being considered a sharp knife, but it's D2 steel. It's not that hard to sharpen, and it's a good knife. The cutting edge length is 7.54 centimeters, 2.97 inches. The blade lengths from the tip to the closest spot on the handle on this specific knife here, 2.78 centimeters, 3.06 inches. So that is from the tip on the handle here to the closest spot. On this case, it's on the liner right there. So it's just a very tiny hair over 3 inches. That's not that hard to adjust. If this knife, if I was going to carry this in a jurisdiction where there's a 3-inch law, I would just sort of, I've got a cold grinding stone. I've got a wet stone that's on a motor that rotates through a bath of water, and so it keeps it cold. And I would just increase the belly of this a little bit, or draw down this drop point just a little bit, just to make it a little bit tinier. So if the person who wants to buy this knife from me wants me to do that for them before I ship it on to them, I'm totally willing to do that. It just needs a very tiny adjustment. How thick is the knife behind the grind? Well, right behind the grind here where my thumbnail is, it is 0.59 millimeters, which is 0.023 inches. So a little bit thicker than I like for an EDC knife, but this isn't an EDC knife really. Well, it is sort of, but it's primarily a puncturing knife and not a slicing knife, but it still does the slicing fairly well. I'm going to leave the grind angle for last because I've got it blank on here. So after I've given the rest of the dimensions, I'll go back to my work center, measure it, and then I'll be back. But for you, it'll just be a few seconds. The handle length is 10.32 centimeters, and that is 4.06 inches. The grip area between my thumbs is about 9 centimeters, about 3.5 inches. So it's still a big enough handle for most people. And my hands are right between large and extra large, and part of the handle still sticks out. So bigger hands are fine with this. If you've got really big hands and you can get the 4-inch version, hey, go for it. Even if you've got smaller hands and you want the 4-inch version, go for it. It's not that much more. It's like a $4 or $5 more for the lowest price version, just for that extra inch. So that's not bad. The handle thickness, 1.24 centimeters, which is 0.487 of an inch, so just over half an inch thick. The handle depth, largest right there, just on the liners, 1.94 centimeters, which is 0.764 of an inch, so 3/4 of an inch. And when the knife is closed, this distance right here, just before the flipper tab, I don't measure it there, I measure it on the body of the main section usually. So not counting the pocket clip, I'm not counting the flipper tab, right about there, 2.27 centimeters, 0.892, so 9/10 of an inch is how big it is this way, and it gets smaller as you get to the end here. The total length of this knife when the blade is deployed from tip to tail, 18.1 centimeters, and that is 7.126, so 7 1/8 inches long. And now finally for the grind angle. Yeah, this was sharpened as though it is definitely a piercing item. The grind angle on this knife, 27.5 degrees on this side and 28.1 degrees on that side. So that's almost, I wish it was shallower. I wish it was 40 degrees inclusive, 20 degrees per side. So when I go to sharpen this knife, I'm going to put a 20-degree final grind on this, instead of, the huge, it's just a, it's not sharpened as though it's a cutting knife. It's sharpened as though the tip here is the be all and end all. Now that might be the primary purpose of this, but you do want this to be better. D2 can easily handle, a 17-degree grind angle down here. So 26 and 27 or 27.5 and 28.1 is just too big of a grind angle. It's unfortunate, Artisan Cutlery. Hopefully your other knives of this style are done better. Maybe that's just this specific knife here, but if all of the knives of this style are done that way, I think you've done your customers a slight disservice. It could be a better angle, because there's a lot of novice knife sharpeners that will just match the angle that it is as best they can. One area that I haven't talked about yet is the lockup. Lockup is just a tiny bit later than I prefer a knife to be. Not bad at all. There's no blade play side to side, up and down. It's a non-free spinning pivot pin, so that's a good thing. Blade alignment when it's closed is close to perfect. And there's no skeletonizing or anything, but I'll show you a picture of what it looks like taken apart. And here it is taken apart. So here you can see the ceramic ball bearings in that white nylon holder, and there's the ceramic detent, and there's no skeletonizing anywhere. It's just a nice light knife because of how small it is. I talked about how much it costs. That equals about $54 Canadian, about 37 euros, about 31.5 British pounds. So the unique features on this, well, I like that you get the exact same knife on 2 different blade lengths and 2 different steel types and a variety of different handle options. That's good. I like that. I like that they made a knife that's very close to 3 inches. I wish they would have paid just a little bit more attention and made it, just under 3 inches instead of just over. It's got a strong detent. Some people might want a detent that strong, but I doubt most people want a detent as strong as this one is. So that's a con on here. But it's not that hard to fix. So it's not a huge con, unless you don't have any other tools that you can, follow my instructions and make that softer. Artisan Cultery has shown to be using the steel that they claim to use, so there's no question in my mind that this is D2, so that's a good thing. It's got a good grip in hand, very comfortable to use. The thickness of the steel, 3.19 millimeters, that's a little over 1/8 of an inch thick, so you do get a sure grip with your, thumb pushing on the back of it if you need to. So I don't mind that at all. The cons on this knife, like I said, the detent is too strong and the grind angle is too high. They need to do something about that. And a very small thing, they could have made it, ultra deep carry instead of just deep carry. This does carry quite deep, but, I think they could modify, if they make more runs of these, they could modify how this pocket clip works. And, they could change that if they wanted to. It's just my personal opinion. So this is the Shark by Artisan Cultery. Thanks for watching my videos. Thanks for liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. And remember, guys, always cut towards your chum, not your thumb.